So I've been asked to speak to you about open educational resources. So you all read the paper? I read it once. That was about enough sometimes. Okay, so let's carry on. So I was asked to talk about open educational resources, and then I thought, well, actually, I've only read one paper, so I don't know a great deal about it, so I changed it to my opinion about open educational resources. So we'll move on through there from that point of view. So I've asked to do this lecture because I've had some experience in an open educational resources project, or OER for short. So I thought I'd make explicitly clear, I'm not a scholar, I'm a technologist. My main place of work is in that strange black building on the other side of campus, with the locked doors. But they do let us out every now and then, hence me being here. So I'm not a scholar, I'm a technologist. I work with technology, and I'm not a theorist in that respect. I haven't published any papers or made any theories or anything like that, but I do think of myself as an activist when it comes to open educational resources. So I'll explain a little bit about why I said that in a bit. And we'll start off. This is the overview of the lecture. We're going to talk about the history of openness, open source versus closed source, how free is free, and how open is open. You've probably got a lot of that from the article. Okay, I thought we'll start nice and deep with a quote from the postmodern condition. I did a philosophy degree myself, so I'm partial to a bit of all this. So we've got 1979, just after I was born, before you were a twinkle in your parents' eye mainly. Knowledge is and will be produced in order to be sold. This is what they thought. This is a state and the nature of knowledge, not on technology, on knowledge. Knowledge is and will be produced in order to be sold, and it will be consumed in order to be valorized in a new production. So if you read that paragraph, I wanted to get one neat quote out of it. I looked it up, and it was all kind of a bit of a page. But look at the postmodern condition. You read the first bit, you'll get this general idea that there's this dystopian view of knowledge. So basically, what Lyotard's saying there is saying all knowledge is going to end up being owned by corporations in big data banks, and they're going to sell it to us. So we're going to produce only information that can be data, and then people are going to sell that back to us, and that's how it's going to be. So that's it. So he actually cites IBM at the time. We're going back a long way when there was, no Apple, no iPods, etc. So where did he come from here? Now I'm suggesting that he came from this feeling here that when we started with Unix, it's like the first operating system. So you're not technologists, I know this, so I'll explain what an operating system is. I wrote it down there. So an operating system, it's like a programming environment where things can grow. It's like the basis, it's like the foundation. It's like a series of protocols, a series of agreements that people have to make a common ground upon which you can develop things. So, it's like the iOS on your iPhone and all the apps that are built on that, Windows and all the programs that are built on that. So that's what an operating system is. And the first one, Unix, some people still say is the best. Was developed by AT&T, so they're the big mobile phone company in America. So we're kind of looking like this is where Lyotard was coming from when he says all knowledge is going to get owned. They're basically grabbing the land when it comes to this virtual land grab of programming environments. IBM are going to own it all. We're just going to have to buy it off them. That's basically what it looks like in around this time. So we've got closed source, you see, operating systems only fully compliant with and certified according to, are qualified to use the trademark of Unix. And from there, everything is supposed to grow. So we're looking like Lyotard's, right? IBM's going to own everything. This is what it looked like in about 1979. But then we move on a bit. And someone came along in 1984. I think he was don't quote me on this, look it up on Wikipedia, but I think he was a developer at MIT or somewhere like that. He came up with this idea that what you should have is a Unix-like operating system, so not solely to create the Unix trademark, as you said in the other one, but just basically a body of free software so anyone can get along with any programming task only using free software, and that's kind of an ideal that was set in the GNU project. And what does GNU stand for? we'll go right back to what it exactly stands for. It stands for GNU's Not Unix, which, you know, it's funny to geeks. So it wasn't successful in this respect. We didn't get that community of people coming together and making this kind of sufficient body of free software. But what did come out of that was something called the GPL license. GPL license. Well, GPL, okay, the GNU public license, but it's usually called the general public license nowadays. And it's this idea of copyleft. So, you know, it's like the opposite of copyright. So you kind of, you know, you've got derived works from the same environment are distributed under the same license. So why do we need this GPL? This is kind of what GNU taught us. It taught us that we needed something, and I've written there, legal protection for open source. So it's a legal framework that we've got that prevents collaborative work from software developers. Someone like Bill Gates comes along, that's a great operating system. I'll sell that, I'll put it in a Windows box and sell it. So GPL protects people in that respect. And I think this is kind of a big moment in open source software, you know, that GPL came along. It gives people the freedom to be able to produce and be able to create things and share things for free. So, okay, let's have a look. What came out of GPL? So amazingly, pretty much everything that you know, every web page that you were served today has probably got a GPL or an Apache license stamp on it somewhere, which is basically an open source license. So without GPL, what you probably would have ended up with was a Microsoft Web, an Apple Web, an IBM Web, you know, and all these different companies own their own protocols. They say, oh, our framework's better than yours, which is better than yours, etc. We don't want any of that, because actually these companies, all they want to do is sell you iPods. They're not interested in like accurate knowledge or free information or any of this. They just want to, you know, they want to sell iPods. What if they owned Wikipedia? Would they only sell you the certain pages of Wikipedia that were, you know, pro them? And so we kind of, so I mean, this is another point I'm making here actually. So we've got, so I've got the a link to the license that protects the actual browser and the internet. So Tim Berners-Lee, we all know Tim Berners-Lee. He created the internet. He was from CERN. I think it's very important that that guy was from CERN. He wasn't from IBM, he wasn't from Apple, he wasn't from, you know, AT&T or MIT. He was from CERN, which we all know is the place in Switzerland where you do the advanced physics research. We find out we're right at the forefront of knowledge. And he created something that he could have packaged up and sold on for millions. And he said, no, this has got to be open source. It's got to be. Because if it's not, we'll just end up with this like this tree of webs, and you know, you'll kind of, the whole point of it all will just be to sell devices and computers. And obviously he didn't know what an iPod was, but he could probably have imagined. And that's my point. At CERN, if you're at the forefront of knowledge, you're not interested in licensing what you learn. You just want to know it. You want to know what a boson-Higgs thing is, not so you can put a copyright around it so anyone else who ever uses a boson-Higgs has got to pay you some money or something like that. It's just, they're at the forefront of knowledge. They want to know what this actually means in the fundamental nature of the universe. And they don't care if people attribute ideas to them or not. They just want to get to that product outcome of knowing a bit more knowledge. I think that's really important when it comes to open source stuff. You know, you go back to the Unix people, they're protecting, you know, what they own so they can think of it in a commercial kind of way. But actually what we talk about here is knowledge as product and outcome. And people at CERN are very good at just throwing their ideas into the commons. So you probably think, what came out of GPL? What did we get? I've told you all these things that came out of it. There's thousands of things in operation that have come out of GPL. If you're interested in programming, I'm sure you're all keen programmers, or maybe not. If you go to Launchpad, there's thousands of open source projects you can contribute to. So what have we got? We've got the Human Genome Project. Do we all remember back in the day when you had the company fighting to get the mapping of the human gene, and then there was the open source project? Maybe you don't remember. So the Human Genome Project, basically you can go onto any place on the web, and there are databases full of the information, which is the human genome, free for anyone to look at. That could have been licensed, it could have been, and who knows what would have come from there. Moodle, none of you know what Moodle is, but I bet you all know what Moodle is this time next year, because it's what we're moving to as a virtual learning. Out with the lovely, in with the Moodle, you'll all know what Moodle is. Mahara, similar kind of thing as Moodle. These are just examples of open source projects. Linux, we all have a Linux. Ubuntu, it's that free operating system you can download. It's a bit geeky, but you know, I'm trying to tell you what sits behind that and why that's important. Okay, Android, might all have Android phones. Again, that's an open source project. Kind of talk about that in the next thing. Firefox, open, Office. They're all open source projects, basically. Free to download. You can Google any one of those things and you'll get something for free, definitely. LAMP. It's not one of those things on the picture. LAMP is the underlying technology of about 3/4 of every web server, and it's open source, and it's licensed by the Apache license. It stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and they're the four kind of foundational stones of web development. That's basically what there's websites that you look at, probably looking at Facebook right now. Those websites are probably served by an Apache server, and that is an open source project. So it means that thousands of people from around the world have just come up with the idea, we should develop a web server so people could serve web pages. And they've all just contributed their bit of code without saying, this is mine, that's yours, this is his. It's just all gone in there. And what you've got out of it is a free framework of server software. So why is it called Apache? Some people say, well, it's after the Indians, you know, it's come that way. Some people say, well, no, it's because back in the day, it was an open source project and it was known as Apache server. And there was all these patches that kept having to go onto it to make it work properly, because that's kind of how open source works, as patches, and then people patch them up. So there you go, that's Apache. Okay. There's probably not a great deal of time. I could talk all day about open source software probably, but you'll all be asleep. So let's move on to open educational resources, because that's kind of what we're here to talk about. I just wanted to give you that little history lesson just so you get the idea of what openness is, what openness gives you. Okay. One more slide. The business advantage of open source. You're thinking, why would I give my knowledge away for free? If I was a company like IBM, why would I just contribute to the Apache project, which is going to help Microsoft and Apple and all the other companies that are my competitors? And that's exactly what IBM thought in 1997. They thought, what are we doing here? But they knew they'd hit a wall with their own kind of building up their own Lotus web server system. So they changed their tack, said, right, we're going to start contributing to the Apache project. And there was a few things, you know, as they went along, there was a few kind of bumps in the road. They started out and they were like, you know, I'm so-and-so from IBM, and this is what I've contributed. And these are all the big fancy communication systems that we use in IBM to do this. And actually, they had to scale that right back and go back to the Joe Bloggs who's just contributing to Apache because he wants to do it, you know, in his bedroom. And so the employers had to kind of come down a step or two and say, right, we'll join your discussion forums and we'll contribute in the proper way, even though it's much more low tech than the ways that we've got in our company. And they reckon, so they started out with very tight control, and in the end, they kind of just sort of released control of putting developments into Apache. They weren't like, oh, well, we can't put that one in, we'll put that one in. They just put them all in, because they realized actually they were saving millions of pounds in research and development, and it was proving too difficult basically to keep up. So I think that's the other point. When you're at the edge, you need to contribute to keep going forward, because protecting what you've got at the edge of knowledge is no good, because other people will go ahead of you. I think IBM kind of realized this. So I haven't got a great deal of time to talk about all this, like I just said. If you want to read a book about it, there's a book called Wikinomics. I don't know who the author is, I don't attribute things. Okay, so we are. How free is free? How free is free? That seems silly, doesn't it? What statement? How free is free? I think that's what we mean. Free beer. Everyone likes a bit of that, don't they? But it doesn't really get you anywhere. So move on to the next slide. Versus free speech. And they're the two differences of freedom, aren't they? You know, free beer, everyone loves that, but it's a bit kind of, but free speech, we all know what free speech means. We know how important free speech is. So, so OER, in the same way that open source is licensed under GPL, so derivative works, copyleft, derivative works get the same license. OER is licensed under Creative Commons. So it's again back to that idea, like I said, it's about a commons, starting from a common ground, about negotiated rules. Don't walk on the grass. Very simple. Move that into the virtual environment, move that into the education environment. It's the same politic we're talking about. We just just in different circumstances. So OER, you can license it in basically 3 different ways or combinations of those 3 different ways. The share alike, which is basically you are free to reuse, remix. I think it says in this page somewhere, reuse, remix, redistribute, something like that. That's basically the you know, if you've got content, you want people to use it, you want that content to move forward, you want people to, you know, to use that and move their own knowledge forward because of it. So there we go, like GPL, it protects educators to license their content without someone coming along going, oh, that's great, I'm going to create an encyclopedia now because you've just written a great book on whatever it is. You say, no, this is Creative Commons, non-commercial, you can't do that, basically. How open is open? We've done how free is free. It's free, but free to do what? And how open is open? So if I gave you a file and said, right, that's the key to all world knowledge in there, and you go, great, what do we want me to do with it? That's kind of the problem that we get in here. We all know the different formats. I mean, back in the day, I used to have a Mac and everyone else had PCs, and it was all format this and format that to try and transfer my data across. The formats do matter. When it comes to distributing knowledge and distributing open education, it really does matter what format you've got things in. So there's different levels of formats there. I think there's one I missed out, but we'll go through the 3 because they cover the most things. So you've got open educational resources that only rest on open source software. So we know what open source software is. You go on the web, you download it, you install it to your Linux box, probably, and then you can open various open educational resources. You say, oh, I really like slides 1 and 2, but I want to change slides 3. That's fine because it's Creative Commons share alike. We can do that. And that would be the most open kind of OER. So yeah, Moodle course backup files, you'll know what they are next year. That's basically you create a Moodle course, you know, about something you know. It might be how to use a microscope. It might be my thoughts on some other kind of thing. And you can create a course on that. You can publish that course to Moodle, and other people in the world can search for your course. They can download it. They can put it in their own Moodle instance. Moodle's free. Anyone can download it. So therefore, Moodle backup files are the most open kind of content you can get. Google Docs, you don't need anything to get on there, just a web browser. We know Firefox is open source, so everything's groovy there. Okay, next level. So OER, and this is where people, I feel, in my practice of OER, sometimes slip up. They kind of go, okay, I've got this great open education. It's a Flash file. I'm just going to put the Flash file online. People can look at that Flash file, they can download it, or they can't download it, they can watch it through a browser, on the web, possibly with a decent connection. You're building up these barriers already. Or I've got this great book, it's a PDF, there you go, I've released it, it's open source, it's open, Creative Commons, I'm fine. And that's not exactly as open as it could be, because we know Open Office is the open source Office environment, so we should have it as a ODC, something like that, you know, an open office basically format, maybe a TXT format or RTF format. People start getting glazed then going, what you want about? And that's why open education is about a relationship between someone with academic knowledge and someone with technical knowledge. So I kind of, let's move on to that later. Okay, so next level, anything that's built on Windows software is basically not very open because you need Windows or Mac software to run it, so it's not the most open thing you can have. So that's down another level of OER. There is another level that it requires software to do, but then you're providing the format which allows them to edit it. So you're kind of in that halfway house between it's non-editable and you need this paid for software, but then you can edit it. So that's kind of the bit in the middle that I missed out. Okay, so I said I'd been involved in some OER projects, so I'll just tell you a little bit about each one. So I've been involved in 3 iterations of OER projects. And the first one, VAL, or Virtual Analytic Laboratory. And I met an academic at a conference, and she said, oh, I've got these great education, this open education. They're all Flash files. It's on this website. The website was kind of clunkily put together, and she said, I need some help really in tightening the website up. That's what she said originally. I just wanted to look the same. be a good design and everything. I said, okay, I can help you with that. I said, but have you thought about those SWFs that you've got, those animation files? Why don't you make those into video files and put them on YouTube as well? I said, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I said, and anyway, that's one thing. How about if you make them into downloadable MP4s so people can download them and play them on the phone when they're offline? That's a great idea. So it's kind of this idea of how open is open, and that when you first get this great idea of, oh, here's some content I want to put out there, you've got to think about, is it the right format to put it out there in? So you'll notice that there, I mean, we can have a look at this resource. I'll click on the link, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so this will take you to the virtual analytic laboratory in a sec. And what you should see there, you should see a video, you should see a way of downloading that video and a link to watch that video on YouTube. So they're kind of, it's like a scattergun approach of trying to get to as many people as possible. Obviously, when you're talking about open education, it's kind of, you know, in that health and life sciences kind of thing, you want to be looking, you're kind of looking, well, I say it's my opinion, I'm looking towards this goal of, you know, someone's, you know, delivering a baby in Africa somewhere, and they just have a computer and they're like, oh my God, this baby's premature, I need to know some technique to be able to get it out safe. So you need to get to your computer and go, I need to know something. And then it gives you some information that helps you save a life. I mean, that is the goal of OER, that you can just go there and just discover something. It looks like it's not finding that, but we'll find it in a second. I'll show you the more in a sec. Oh, there it is. There you go. So there's the resources page, and what was I going to show you? Let's have a look at this one. Here's an SWF, parts of the microscope. Click here if you're using a mobile device, and we'll just have a quick look at these parts of the microscope. So, you know, as an aside, the person who did these, created these open educations, she puts them out there, she invites people, you'll see, it says give us feedback everywhere on the page. There should be something that says give us some feedback about this. There isn't on that one, but they usually, so you go to a feedback form, and she collates all this feedback. She said, you know, the other day, she got an email from somewhere in America, who's like, you know, bin man or something. He said, really glad I stumbled across your resource the other day. I've really wanted to know how a microscope works. You know, it's kind of, you can take a lot from there. Education has failed me, but I'm still interested, you know, and I think there's a lot of that going on in the world, personally. Okay, so we've had a look at that. That's a standard kind of open education. If you click that, you'll see it in a video format that will work on your mobile MP4. Okay, so you see, we've got this web address. I can't even bother to read it out, it's so long. So we're thinking, right, the next stage, we need to be able to get these resources more discoverable, you know. So the next project, Scooter, about sickle cell anemia. So you may not know that last year was the centenary of when they discovered sickle cell anemia. So we developed a project from it. What we want to do, we want to get as much content relating to sickle cell anemia. We want to put a Creative Commons stamp on it, and we want to get it out there on the web. Okay, that's what we said. So we created a website, sicklecellanemia.org. You can go there, look at all kinds of resources. But then we added this extra aspect to it of discoverability. So what do we mean by that? How do I find and recognize open educational resources? So I'm looking on the web. How do I find them? Why are they going to search if I type, you know, premature baby in my Google search? Is it going to bring up that open educational resource, or is it just going to be a load of rubbish that isn't going to help me in the here and now? So we added this extra element of discoverability to open educational resources. And basically what that is we add things to the web page to trick the search engines into thinking that it's a much higher thing. They use it all the time, you know, lots of companies use it to get themselves higher Google searches. That's kind of what we're doing. And I'm not sure where we are now. I mean, we're in open education, we're on the brink of knowledge. No one knows what's going to happen. I don't know if that's the best way forward, because that requires constant effort. If you drop off putting your blog posts out there, then you're going to drop off the search engine optimization. So I'm not sure whether that's the way to go, or whether it's better discoverability-wise to go down a way where you have like ISBN number for each resource. It's a nice key that you can use, but then that doesn't really work for derivative resources. So you kind of, I move on to another idea. I thought, well, how about if you use meta tagging? Each web page has meta tagging. You'll find libraries use this thing called Dublin Metacore standards all the time. Should we use that for, you know, have our own OER metadata. I don't know is the answer. Don't look at me for answers. They're just suggestions of how it will go. As a totally left field suggestion, maybe we don't need to worry about this at all. Maybe, you know, in a couple of years, this new super Google personalized search will just come along and say, oh, I noticed you've been searching for sickle cell anemia a lot. Did you know that there's this website you can look at as well? And maybe Google will rank that higher for me just because it knows who I am. I don't know, you know, I think these are things where, you know, as the ground shifts and as we move forward, you don't know what's coming. You've just got to kind of be where you are, put your content out there, make it as open as possible, and kind of, you know, do these tricks to get it searched higher, but kind of hope that eventually it's going to get picked up by in a discoverability way. Okay, so the next stage of that was HALS, Health and Life Sciences, similar kind of thing, Creative Commons content, put a Creative Commons stamp on it. By the way, the Scooter resource, there was one resource with someone who wrote a textbook on this, and it had gone out of publication. And the person I worked with, she contacted the person who owned the rights to it then and said, can we make this Creative Commons now and put it on our website? And it was the daughter of the person who'd written the book come back and says, yeah, you can do that, put Creative Commons on it, and I'm really pleased that you're doing that. My dad would have wanted this to happen. You know, I think that says quite a lot about what people want when they publish things and what they actually get. He wanted it to be out there. He dedicated his life to sickle cell anemia, not so he could write books, but so he could tell people about sickle cell anemia, and this is the way in which you can do that. Okay. So here's some examples. That didn't really work, that one. So I'll give you another example of OER. I've been talking mainly about education, so the stuff you traditionally recognise as education. What's this on a microscope? How do I do that? It's the kind of stuff you learned at school. So let me show you something you probably didn't learn at school. I mean, I would class this as open education, just the same. Skip on a little bit. Have we got any volume on this? Okay. There's no volume to it, but if you watch this, basically what this is it's a video of an old lady, some of the stuff she's got in her attic. There's loads of these videos, and they're great. An old lady from Salford, and she's saying, this is what I got in my attic. It's it's the newspaper from Armistice Day, and I always keep it. It's like keeping that local history. As far as I'm concerned, that's open educational resource. Maybe not to someone who's trying to deliver a baby in Africa, but it's open educational resource to someone, you know, someone who wants to know about history. And this woman's not a scholar. She probably never stepped foot in a university, but, you know, there she is telling you about something that you never knew before. As far as I'm concerned, that's open education. Okay. So that resource, you don't have to be a scholar to contribute. Contribution is free, participation. So this lecture, this is OER. You may notice me recording it at the beginning. But it's OER in a very kind of lockdown format, isn't it? You know, we're using this special kind of high advanced meeting software. So what do I need to do? I need to extract the MP3 from it so we can all download it, listen to me again on the bus on the way home, which I'm sure you want to do. So as a recording, we all heard of SlideShare. We can put the slides online, you know, watch it that way. Okay, then, so the next thing, I didn't give you further reading, I give you further thinking. So MIT OpenCourseware, who's heard of that? It's been in the news recently, MIT, they've opened out all their courseware, and the big news is that they've started giving badges for completion of that courseware. So, you know, people on one side, I'm sure there's some people in this university thinking, oh my God, my business plan's down the tubes, basically. So MIT are giving it all away for free. But this is the further thinking. You read Wikinomics, IBM started contributing to Apache. Why? Because they couldn't keep up. MIT OpenCourseware, is that the future of education? Free education out there for anyone. You don't have to pay 9,000, you don't have to pay 1,000. You just have to do it. Okay. That's not the last slide, is it? So there we go. OER is about participation. It's about putting what you know in the domain. The domain is free and it's open source. It's the internet. Someone made it free and open source. The state of knowledge, I started out, I said knowledge is going to be owned by IBM. in very complicated data formats that no one understands except people who work at IBM. That's how we started this lecture. But actually, I think we've moved on. I think I've moved on anyway. I hope you guys have as well. Moved on to an idea where knowledge is out there, and when it's out there, it's out there. And when you're at the forefront of knowledge, you don't care about people going, oh, so-and-so learned that, or so-and-so learned that. You just want to know what the next step is, because that's what being at the forefront actually means. You know, it's... so there we go. This is the next. So I said I'd say why I said I was an activist. I'm not a scholar. You probably realise that by now. So this is what I think. I think the world is what we define it as, and the OER is an opportunity to participate in that definition. Okay. So we all know something. It might be, you know, transcripts of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or it might be, you know, something a lot more useful. Whatever it is, I believe we've got a moral duty to give it away for free, because that's what life's all about, for me anyway. That's what I think. All that you touch and all that you see is all your life will ever be. So open education, open source or closed source? That's the question, basically. All that is now and all that is gone and all that's to come, it's up to you, basically. It's what you define it as. And if you don't participate, brick in the wall. There you go. That's it. That's me. Any questions?